So this is a question about someone that's kind of concerned about the market. I have a trip booked. My hotel and flight have already been paid for. I have the money budgeted for food and kind of all that entertainment expenses in my bank account. Um, what are your thoughts about canceling this trip because inflation's kind of spiraling right now?
Yeah, that's a good question because travel's picking up now. I got a lot of clients that are, going out now, really since April, uh, end of this year, all kinds of scheduled trips this summer, a lot of pent up demand in the travel
Mm-hmm.
arena, just because of not being able to travel for quite a while. So, you've got this trip booked, right? You've already paid for a lot of the pieces. Probably, if you did it right, you could get most of those back if you had to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in this world, I'd be a little careful of not having refundable tickets and what have you. Um, but I guess I look at it like, well, you've already committed to this to the point where you've already scheduled it, you've saved the money, you've already booked the flight, the hotels, you've got all these pieces together. Life is kind of short too, so you don't know what's going to happen going forward. I think if you've got a window to be able to take a trip like that, you probably should take it. But inflation is a concern, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, I just spent this money and inflation goes skyrocketing, and I'm going to look back and say, wow, I wish I still had that money to be
Mm-hmm.
able to afford the basic things that I have. So there are some situations depending on, your overall financial scenario, right? If you're really close to the edge financially and you're pushing yourself even closer with this trip, and a lot of people do that, believe me. But that there may be some argument to kind of getting that money back. However, the problem I have is that we don't know what inflation is going to be. Everybody says it's going to continue to skyrocket. It's going to continue to go up and up, and it's totally out of control. Not everybody, but there's a lot of people out there that feel that way. And I think that you have to be really careful because we don't know. I mean, that's something that's a bit unknowable as far as that goes. Inflation did peak so far in March. We've had 1 month down, which isn't enough to say we're going down, but it's a start. And so, what happens next month and the month after that? And I guess I would hate to give up a trip and find out that inflation turned out to not be such a
Mm-hmm.
big deal. And it did fall into that kind of 2 to 4% range in the next 6 to 12 months, which isn't great, but it's better than 7 to 8 that we've been in for a while here. So, personally, unless it was a really dire scenario where you probably shouldn't be taking the trip in the first place, if it's that dire,
Yeah.
then I'd probably take that trip. One of the things that the question did mention was saving in other areas to kind
Mm-hmm.
of make up for it. I think that's a great idea,
Yeah.
right? And there are a lot of places that people can save.
Yeah, and especially if you're it's also about living your life. If your mental health is suffering because you're still just working and grinding through, and not taking this trip is probably a little bit worse in the end. Because even though there's optimal financial decisions, we should also still be able to make these decisions within boundaries of keeping ourselves happy. Because we shouldn't be sacrificing everything to have that perfect financial outcome. We should be trying to live our lives while still trying to make good overall decisions.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's I have some wild stories from my years with clients, and I've met some really wealthy people who have become wealthy because they didn't do anything. Uh, I mean, even to the point where they have a car that's 20, 30 years old with 12,000 miles, didn't even drive, didn't travel,
Hmm.
and their big goal in life was to accumulate money, and they bought stocks, and that was their thrill. Really, even I remember one scenario where it was just counting the dividends. That was the fun. Didn't need to travel because I could count the dividends. There's nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
There really isn't, because that's what lifestyle meant to that person. So it is different for everybody, but for most people, there's some kind of balance that people are trying to achieve. Because you can go the other way, right, where you're living for the day, spending every nickel that comes in all the time, never prepared for any emergency whatsoever, and thinking that life is just short and around the corner could be some disaster. So I'm doing what I can do now. Again, as long as you're willing to put up with the ramifications of that, that's okay too. But I do think you need to kind of identify, where you're at on that spectrum and be able to pick and choose. There isn't a perfect answer for everybody, but it is. I think probably a balance applies to more people.
Yeah.